what I liked about him the most tonight was his anger when he came off. It's frustrated. I liked it. First time I've seen a bit of anger, a bit of we've been trying to poke him a little bit to get angry. I want him to get angry. I want him to get nasty. I want him to get sort of like the fire. And I like that tonight. I saw something in that excites me about Saturday's game against New England for Josef.
Josef Martinez has finally made his presence felt with Inter Miami, both with his goal-scoring exploits and also his trademark fiery temper. Hello everyone, hola y bienvenidos a todos. Welcome back to Miami Total Football Radio, the number one and most listened to Inter Miami focused podcast that provides you with all the latest team news, analysis, opinions, inside information, general punditry, and much more via a group of seasoned South Florida-based reporters. First off, the group and I want to apologize for both not having a show in between this past weekend's game and Tuesday's match, and for also dropping a show so late in the week this week. However, the very, very quick turnaround for that rare Tuesday tilt, combined with other midweek matches, made it very challenging for us given our schedules. I know you listeners like to have your weekly dose of Miami Total Football Radio, so we are sorry for the delay, but here we are. My name is Franco Panizo, and joining me on this week's late episode is a very special and spicy co-host who may just have to eat her words after a heated debate on last week's show. I am, of course, talking about none other than Andrea Yanez, a.k.a. Ajicita. Andrea, how are you today?
Hi, Franco. Nice to be back. I won't eat my words. I guess you won't like what I have to say today, right? So let's do this. Let's get ready to do this.
Well, we have a lot to talk about, and I'm going to try to make this intro nice, short, and sweet because we've got two games to talk about. We've got individual performances to talk about. We've got to preview an upcoming game against the New England Revolution. So there's a lot. There's a lot to dissect, discuss, analyze, debate over, I'm sure. So, Andrea, let's get to it. Okay, listeners. We'll start with news that took place on Thursday. Since this is a late show, let's react to the most recent news regarding Inter Miami. And that is that they learned their fate for the round of 16 in the U.S. Open Cup. That's because they will be playing Nashville SC at home at DraftKings Stadium in Fort Lauderdale on either May 23rd or May 24th. A lot of interesting things to touch on there in the match or about the match, but just quickly to dive into just the immediate and initial reaction. Andrea, your thoughts on Inter Miami drawing Nashville SC in the round of 16, the first MLS side it will face this season in that competition.
It's going to be a good test. It's going to be a difficult test for them, especially after what we saw on Tuesday on that game against Charleston Battery, who is a good team, but had a lot of players injured. And even though with that, they only advanced because of an own goal. So it's going to be hard against Nashville, who is one of the best teams in the competition. It's going to be hard for them. But I guess they have an advantage because they play them pretty soon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, a week before they played an MLS game in Nashville. So that's the difference.
Exactly.
Well, besides the fact that it's an MLS game, but yes,
and
they do play.
Usually when you do that by the second game, you already know the opponent. You already have studied how they played. So I guess that could be a starting point for Inter Miami. But listen, I think it's going to be hard. Nashville is really a good team and has a lot of interesting players, a lot of talent, the past MVP. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to tell our listeners the truth. It's going to be hard. The advantage is that they play them before and they play them at home. Hopefully people go, right? Because for the Tuesday game, I guess no one knows what Open Cup is, right? So no one went to the game.
So we will dive into that. We'll touch on that a little bit more once we get to that game. But to touch on what you just mentioned, that is very interesting because a week after they play in the MLS regular season, they face off again in the U.S. Open Cup. Now they change venues, right? Instead of playing in Nashville, they'll be in South Florida. So Inter Miami will have the home field advantage. But it's going to be interesting, not only because of that, but because this is part of a very busy stretch of games. So how Inter Miami and Nashville SC, get to that game in terms of the shape that they're in and who's available and who's fresh and who's not fresh, like that's going to be a big part of it all. So obviously we can't project from this point to then who's going to be available, but just before the second time they meet in that U.S. Open Cup game, round of 16, Inter Miami will have played 3 times before that in the week and a half prior. So it's going to be the 4th game in 2 weeks. You could even stretch it further, and it's going to be even more challenging. So you have to expect Inter Miami, and I imagine Nashville SC as well, will want to field a strong lineup, but there's going to have to be some sort of rotation. Can't imagine Inter Miami's going to have the strongest lineup days after playing rivals Orlando City at home, and again after playing this grueling stretch of games, which is exciting both for the team and for fans and also for us in the media because we've got a lot of games in short order, but that will be a challenge. And Nashville SC, and I'll close out on this thought. Nashville SC is probably deeper than Inter Miami, and that is that's where you're going to need a big performance in that game. Like you said, it will be a challenge. It will be a challenge.
I was going to say that they won yesterday against FC Dallas, playing with the bench. Listen, not Aníbal Godoy didn't play, Hani Mukhtar didn't play, McCarthy didn't play, but they have the likes of Randa Leal and Fafa Picot who scored in this game. So it's going to be really hard. If you compare the teams, it's going to be really hard for Inter Miami, especially because of all we talked about, but especially because of the depth that both teams have, and what Nashville has available is superior to what Inter Miami has available now.
And one more thing of note there, and this is probably a good reason. I know it's going to be a midweek match, tougher to attend. I get it. I've covered MLS a long time. Regular season games don't draw as well during midweek than they do on the weekend. Open Cup games, obviously. But this might be a reason for Inter Miami fans to turn out even more so, or make that extra effort to do so, even if it's a bit challenging, make that extra effort, because Inter Miami historically has not been very good against its expansion brother. Don't forget, Inter Miami and Nashville SC entered the league at the exact same time back in 2020. They have played a total of 6 times dating back to that 2020 season, including Inter Miami's first playoff match. I know Jose and Andrea counted as a play-in game and not a playoff match, but
talk to the NBA.
regardless, in those 6 games, Inter Miami has won only once. They have tied twice and lost.
And now Nashville is better than in years past, I think.
So if it's challenging for you as an Inter Miami fan to make it out, but you can make the effort to do so, I mean, that's one reason to do so, to go support the team, because it will very likely need all the help it can get against the team that, again, historically has been superior than them. But anyway, let's leave it there. We all have time to talk about that game as it draws near, and after we see the first matchup between the two teams in MLS play midweek next week. So let's go and start recapping the most recent games, and we'll start with the first of the two, the one that took place over the weekend. So Inter Miami made it 2 wins in a row in league play by beating Atlanta United 2-1 at home at DraftKings Stadium this past Saturday. And the goals came from who else? La Ley de Lex, as we discussed on last week's show. Josef Martinez bags a brace. He scores twice to lead the South Florida side to victory. Apareció el Rey, at long last. The King finally made his presence felt. His first 2 goals for the team. 59th minute off a penalty kick, and then in the 75th minute, Andrew Gutman pulled one back late for Atlanta United in the second half stoppage time, but Inter Miami held on for the win. Josef Martinez was named to the Team of the Week as a result of his 2-tally performance. And there was a lot to talk about in terms of his display, the post-game comments. So before we get to all that, because that's definitely a massive talking point, the overall thoughts on the collective performance. This was their second win in a row. It was their 3rd game unbeaten across all competitions because they tied that game against Miami FC. But nonetheless, Andrea, your thoughts on the overall performance from this past Saturday?
Well, I didn't like it. For me, it was a bad performance. They were very lucky to get with the 3 points. I guess that is the important part, that they avoided another defeat. And they defended with all 11 players the last 15 minutes. So that was hard to see, to tell you the truth. Footballistically speaking, for me, the team is the same. They have not been playing well. And this game was just confirmation for that. For me, it was a boring game. Josef came in and scored that penalty after David Ruiz won it. And then the second goal, we have to give credit to Yedlin. Nice play. And to Josef for scoring. But besides that, it was a horrible game. A boring game. And not the kind of football that I guess the fans expect for the team. But the positive is that they won.
So there you go again with the word lucky. I don't know how you can say they were lucky. They were up 2-0 before Atlanta United even pulled one back in stoppage time, and that was with Inter Miami playing down a man since the 84th after Franco Negri was shown a red card after VAR deemed him to go studs up on a challenge, or he got a red card. So actually, before I dive into more of that, this was Inter Miami's starting lineup. They came out in a 4-2-3-1. Drake Callender was in goal. DeAndre Yedlin, Serhi Christoph, Kamal Miller, and Franco Negri made up the back 4. Dixon Arroyo and David Ruiz were comprising that first line of the midfield. The second line of the midfield, Corentin Jean, Benjamin Kremaski. That's right, it's Kremaski, not Kremashi. We've been corrected on that. As the 10, and Nicola Stefanelli out on the left. Up top, Leonardo Campana. So, look, I agree with you, Andrea, that it was not a beautiful display of soccer. Actually, Jose and I, who's not on the show this week, but Jose and I laughed at halftime or joked about how the opening play was a sign of things to come for that first half. Without we didn't know it at the time, but it was a sign of things to come after the fact when you had hindsight as 2020. Because Inter Miami did the usual play that it does when it starts a match and it has the ball. Or even when it starts a half and it has the ball. Right? They kick off, they play it back to Drake Callender. Inter Miami sends like 6 players forward, and then Drake Callender just bombards it forward, long balls it, hoofs it up the field, and Inter Miami tries to win a second ball and hope that it can lead to a chance. If you haven't noticed that, you'll surely see it again this weekend. Keep an eye on it because that's what Inter Miami has done ad nauseum this year. Whenever they kick off to start a half, whether it's the first half or the second half, that's what they do. And when Drake Callender did this one, normally he plays it into the mixer, into a group. This time he kicked it to nobody. Nobody. He just like skipped harmlessly away from everybody. And that was a sign of things to come from the game itself. Because Inter Miami, constantly was hitting long balls. Was not great in terms of creating attacking chances. Atlanta United was the more threatening side. But couldn't find the breakthrough, couldn't find that last bit of quality or composure in the final third. They just kept sending in cross after cross after cross.
If they had their starting goal scorer, it would have been different.
But they didn't. So Inter Miami defended well. They stayed organized, compact.
Organized. They defended with 11 players in the 70th minute. They didn't pass midfield. For me, well, I guess for me that's not progress.
So they stayed compact. They were organized. They were committed to the cause. And they saw it through and won. Now, last week when we talked about... Suffering. At the end.
They didn't suffer.
At the end.
The last 10 minutes, they didn't suffer, Frank.
With one player less, Andrea. With one player less.
When the referee gave 9 minutes and everyone was crying, they were not suffering.
I'm not saying they didn't suffer.
Oh, okay.
They suffered, but they also were playing down a man. All the same, last week on the show, you and Jose both sat there and told me and the listeners that this recipe was not going to, or this formula, this style of play was not going to lead to continued success. Yet, for the second straight week in an MLS match, Inter Miami beat a better team than them in the standings, playing as an unattractive style. Admittedly, an unattractive style. Something even Phil Neville noted after the game.
Yes.
But like I mentioned last week, and I liked Phil's answer on Saturday when he talked about how they had to go back to basics. That playing possession soccer wasn't yielding results. That they had to start from scratch. And that he said, the football will come and yada, yada, yada. But yes, that they had to be a more defensive-minded team. Because
in that answer, he admits that footballistically speaking, they have not progressed.
Okay,
he even admitted in that answer.
The question was not about futbolistically. No estamos hablando futbolísticamente.
That is what we meant.
No. I mean that's. But we're talking about
Franco.
No, Andrea. We're talking about the team functioning.
You are just talking because of the results. You are talking because of the results.
Andrea, you can play beautiful soccer, and if you don't win, that means nothing.
If Atlanta tied this game, you would not be saying that. You would not be saying that.
Andrea,
just admit it.
That's not has nothing.
We can
say
what Phil said. He said we went back to basic. That's not what
because that is what this team has to do. That's what this team has to do, Andrea.
He nos está dando la razón because he is admitting that this is a regression.
No, he's not. That's not. That is incorrect. That is incorrect.
It is a regression. He said we are going back to basics.
Exactly.
That is regressing.
You are talking about from a playing pretty soccer standpoint.
Yes, because
but we're not talking about that. That's not what we're talking about, Andrea. We're not talking about that.
Are another thing.
That's not what we're talking about.
A result-driven journalist. That is
what are you talking about? This team again? I'm not going to have the exact same argument with you again.
Atlanta?
I'm not having the same because that would you have to take into the full analysis of how the game played out. Inter Miami, did Drake Callender have to make amazing saves yet again? No, because the defense held up well. It's progression. It is progress in the sense that this team, in going back to basics, functions better than it does when it tries to play attractive soccer up until this point. Phil Neville even said the phrase champagne football. This team cannot play champagne football because it does not work. Now, we can dive into the reasons why, and I can tell you one of the reasons why. I think Phil Neville has a massive part to play in that because when Inter Miami has been at its best since he has arrived in 2021, the best stretches have come when they've played this rudimentary defensive-minded style. When they've played 5 at the back, when they've played defensively minded, looking to counterattack, that's when Inter Miami has been at its best under Phil Neville. And I think that's because Phil Neville, tactically, for whatever reason, when he tries to attack, he can't figure it out. He can't get the best out of the players consistently. Now, you could say last season, the tail end of last season, was, Inter Miami's best stretch under Phil Neville in terms of an attacking sense. But a lot of that, for my analysis, is that Gonzalo Higuain and Alejandro Pozuelo really lifted the team. There was a few goals late from Gonzalo Higuain that didn't come necessarily from some magical run of play from Inter Miami. It just came from a good pass here and then a moment of brilliance from the Argentine. So, for me, Phil Neville, his tactics, Inter Miami under him has been at its best when it's defending. And that's what I think that's the most you can ask
But
out of a Phil Neville team.
How do you measure the best? Results,
absolutely.
or what?
Absolutely.
Well, then you are resultadista.
No, Andrea.
Because of the play.
Andrea, if they went when Greece won the Euro Cup in 2004, if I'm not mistaken, and they did it in a defensive-minded, counter-attacking way, winning off set pieces, that's not progress because they are not playing attractive style of soccer. Like, and
Franco,
that is absurd. That is
say.
absurd.
Let's turn the page and talk about U.S. Open Cup.
No,
what progress did you see there? Progress?
We can't. We're not going to Open Cup yet because we still have to talk about
Why?
Josef. We have to talk about Josef here.
You are talking about results.
I think it's a bit ridiculous from you and Jose's part to not see that this team has progressed as a group, not from a stylistic standpoint, but from a performance level standpoint, because they are Andrea, performance doesn't just mean attacking. Performance doesn't mean just having the ball. Performance means you can defend. You can defend and stay compact and win games that way off a set piece. Plenty of teams have done it. The U.S. before this golden generation prized themselves on being a team that was stout defensively, that relied on excellent goalkeeping, be it Tim Howard, Casey Keller, Brad Friedel, and they won games in that way.
You had Landon Donovan, Brian McBride.
Habían individualidades. There was individual talent, of course, that helped them win games, but they weren't a team that knocked the ball around.
If Inter Miami played like the 2002 U.S. national team, I would be happy.
Anyway, I'll just leave it with Don Cafecito's comment from post-show last week. He said, "You can't expect to play champagne football with the current squad and manager. So until the squad is improved with better quality and talent, and the manager is replaced with someone of a higher caliber, the best approach is the practical catenaccio way and earn points." And that's like the most succinct way for Don Cafecito to sum up my thoughts about the topic of the style of play. We'll dive into it a little bit more because Phil was also asked about that on Tuesday. Very good question from Jose, but we'll get to that in a bit. Let's focus on Josef Martinez and the game he had on Saturday. Comes off the bench with his first touch, scores a penalty kick against his former team. He also celebrated the goal and then kneeled in front of the traveling Atlanta United supporters as a nod of respect to them. I know some Atlanta United fans weren't too happy. They didn't understand that he did that or that he was doing that for the away supporters because the broadcast didn't really catch that in a good way. Didn't really see him look up at the Atlanta supporters before he kneeled. The second goal that he scores, which I think is a trademark Josef Martinez goal. I've seen him score that type of goal in MLS multiple times. Nice pass in behind from DeAndre Yedlin, like you mentioned previously. And then Josef Martinez, from a tough angle, not the easiest angle, with a sliding finish, gets it across the face of goal to the back post, and that gave Inter Miami a 2-0 lead at that point. So, a dream first matchup against his former team, where he's a legend, where he's still very well liked and admired. Just like there were some people that didn't like the fact that he celebrated, others were very vocal in expressing that they didn't mind, that he's earned it, that he's still their king, etc., etc., etc. For him, it was, he talked about it post-game, it was a whirlwind of emotions. He was happy that he helped Inter Miami win, he was happy to get his first goals, but that it came against his former team, against an Atlanta United side that has a lot of players that he has spent so much time with, a fan base that has supported him through many, many years, through very, very big highs as well as some lows. I mean, it was just a whirlwind of emotions. He seemed as emotional as I've seen him in the post-game press conference, even more when he did an on-field interview with Inter Miami staff that was put out on social media channels, the team social media channels. So a whirlwind of emotions for Josef Martinez. What do you think about the performance? What do you think it does for his confidence going forward, though we do already now know what happened on Tuesday, but just your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was necessary for Josef to have this kind of a night. I think it was good for his teammates to let him take the penalty because other player could have taken the ball, but they gave it to him. I think it was important, showing of support by his teammates. And I guess this for Josef is a new beginning in his Inter Miami career because he's gotten off that pressure that he had, so many games have gone by and he wasn't able to score. So that penalty was very, very important to him. Listen, if I was an Atlanta fan, I think I would be mad. Usually when a player scores against my team, that has played against my team, usually people get mad. But I think Josef Martinez realized in that moment and tried to pay his respects, because it's people have to understand that what he was going through with Inter Miami and all these things was tough for him. So I understand that he had to vent that out. So I don't think he did it in a bad way, and he, as you said, he kneeled in front of the Atlanta fans, and maybe that wasn't shown on the on TV, and that's why people were mad. But for him, I think it's important, and the most important thing for me, and what I like the most, is that his teammates gave him the ball and gave him that opportunity to take that penalty, because he just got in and they gave him the ball and let him take that opportunity, and he took it. Obviously, we know of his capabilities. And the second goal, as you said and I said before, it was a typical Josef Martinez goal that you expect him to get it every time. And I really liked Yelin's pass. That is why Yelin is such a dangerous player, even though he sometimes has defensive mishaps. I don't think there are a lot of players in this league that can go as he does to the front and create as much danger as he does. And this ball showed it. So I guess it's good for Yelin also to get an assist, and good for Josef. And it was nice to see him emotional, to see how much it meant to him. And I guess we confirmed that he was under a lot of pressure to score that first goal with Inter Miami.
Which was interesting because pre-game, got to speak to him before the game, and he said along the lines of, like, he kind of downplayed having any pressure. He said, like, my pressure is to bring food on the table for my son and my family. This is just a sport. The comments he made beforehand were to kind of really downplayed the importance or the pressure that we thought he was under. But then on Saturday, you could see that, it was impacting him. It was impacting him. Despite his words earlier in the week, it was impacting him, the fact that he could not find the back of the net. This is a guy that's used to scoring, especially in MLS. So, and he talked about post-game about it being a very weird day, if not the weirdest day in his life. He said so many mixed emotions. He, like you mentioned, he asked Campana for the penalty, and Campana gave it up, no problem. And, I did like the celebrations on both goals, because you could see how genuinely happy the team was for Josef. Like the second goal where him and Yedlin kind of point at each other in like a funny little way. It showed how happy the team was for him to get going, to get off the schneid, to find the back of the net at long last after, the criticism was raining down on him a good bit. Josef also said post-game that he was as nervous during the penalty kick as he was when his son was born, while also noting the difference in context of the two situations. But yes, he did say that as well. So it was interesting post-game because he talked about, I don't think, based on my interpretation of what he said, and we won't go too deep into it because we want to make this a fairly condensed show, given it's a short turnaround before Saturday's game. But, he at one point towards the end, he didn't thank Atlanta United. He thanked the city. And he also said it earlier in that press conference this past Saturday that, nothing is forever and blah, blah, blah. But that, he also didn't get a chance to say goodbye to his teammates when he left and didn't have that opportunity. So seeing them again, it's after having spent so much time and so many years with them, it just created this whirlwind of emotion. So for me, I think there's some bad blood
There was a message for Gonzalo Pineda and Carlos Bocaneira.
Right, I think there's some bad blood there, for sure, with the club and the way they 100%. Handled it. Now, do I think he appreciates his time in Atlanta? Absolutely. Do I think he has genuine good thoughts and feelings towards the supporters and his teammates and the staff and the memories he created there? Absolutely. But I think there is some ill will towards some people in that organization and how, that led to how Pineda. It ended. So...
Bocaneira.
But anyway, so it was a storybook night for Josef Martinez, a storybook game. Also of note, and we haven't mentioned that yet because again there was so much to talk about from this game. Those 2 goals made Josef Martinez the fastest player in MLS history to reach 100 goals. He surpassed Bradley Wright Phillips for that honor. So Josef Martinez got the 2 goals he's been looking for a good while. Should help him get that weight off his back. La mochila, as we say in Spanish, the backpack. So that should bode well, maybe, for what's to come in the future for him. Now, I said maybe because now we got to switch gears to the second game against the Charleston Battery. Inter Miami won that game on Tuesday night at DraftKings Stadium in U.S. Open Cup round of 32 play. The lone goal came off an own goal in the second half. We'll dive into that here in a second. But Josef Martinez was subbed off in this one. And when he was subbed off, Andrea, the broadcast, very, very attentively, and I got to give them their props because they kept the camera on Josef Martinez from the moment that the substitute sign went up. The camera went on Josef as he looked at the sign, as he walked off the field, as he walked past Phil Neville, and as he even walked towards the bench and then unleashed a pair of ferocious fists at a couple of empty chairs. Very
You could
angry.
tell it was a U.S. soccer transmission and not an MLS, right?
But listen, whoever was the producer and whoever was that cameraman, kudos to you guys because you knew the material and you kept with it, and you didn't cut to go see Schneider Borgelin come on to the field or look at Phil. It stayed on Josef Martinez, and we got to see a real sign of frustration. The first time we've seen Josef Martinez really show that type of emotion, the one that he has been criticized for in the past, the one has led a similar type of emotion that has led to incidences with coaches, both at the club and international level. The type of emotion that has made him, at times, a controversial figure. This happened in the 56th minute of the game. Game was, at that point, 1-0 in Inter Miami's favor. But, Andrea, before we get to the game, we saw the good side of Josef Martinez on Saturday, and then we saw maybe the not-so-good side as he was subbed off on Tuesday. What did you make of his reaction to being substituted, and why do you think he was that frustrated?
Listen, I get it. I think it was completely normal for analyzing the situation for me from him because he is a striker that scored 2 goals on Saturday, that he's trying to get his groove back, that you don't have plans to put your other good strikers in this match, as is Leo Campana. Josef expected, I'm sure, to play the whole 90 minutes. And he didn't. So I totally get his frustration because for me, I also thought Josef Martinez could have played the 90 minutes. It could have helped keeping the team dangerous as you keep a striker like him with the experience that he had. So I totally get his reaction. I get people getting preoccupied because it's Josef Martinez. He fought with De Boer, he fought with Gonzalo Pinella and a lot of other coaches with his national team. But here, I think it's justified, and it shows that his commitment that we talked about in the last couple of podcasts that was a little shaky, that he is committed to try and get the results and get going with Inter Miami. For me, it was a mistake to take him off. But and I guess he thought the same because he felt that he could play 90 minutes. And it would have been a good game for him to play 90 minutes, to get his confidence, to keep on getting minutes, getting playing time. And that is what a striker needs. But I get it. I get it when people get preoccupied, especially because
Worried.
worried, because especially we have seen Phil have complicated relationships with players in the past. So that could get complicated. I don't think Phil cares because he knows he has been a professional player for a lot of times, and I guess during time in his career he got frustrated because a manager took him off. So I don't think it would be a big deal because of Phil's personality.
So while I don't think it's a big deal, I think it's something like ojo, keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on that. Because, yes, Phil Neville, after the game said he liked the reaction, that he'd like to see the little fire in Josef Martinez that, they haven't really seen up until this point. And he even alluded to, Phil Neville alluded to himself and the coaching staff trying to prod and find a way to get that fire under Josef Martinez. Because, listen, I'm of the belief, and, I think this was what Phil Neville was getting at, and I would agree with him, that I do think that when Josef Martinez plays with that anger, that chip on his shoulder, that's when he's at his best. When he feels like he has to prove people wrong and he has to play with that demeanor, I think that's when he's at his best. And I think, it's no coincidence. Yes, he was on a better Atlanta United team. Yes, he hadn't suffered the injuries yet. But when he was at his best in MLS, it was when he played with that type of passion and that type of anger. And you know what? So I don't disagree with what Phil Neville said post-game, but it is something to keep an eye on. Because if you see more and more of that...
Yeah, that's the way it started with the
right.
boy.
So then that's where it can prove problematic, and that's where Phil Neville would, if it happens, then have to start figuring out how to best manage that. So right now, yeah, sure, he liked it. It's all peaches and roses. Okay, we'll see if it continues. And then we'll see how Phil Neville reacts and responds and manages that. That will be something, again, to keep an eye on. I won't make a big deal about it other than the fact that it's the first time we saw it, something like this. And, again, something that bears watching. I did think it was interesting, and I wish, we could share the images on Twitter, but we can't due to broadcasting rights. But when Josef Martinez sees the sign come up, he looks at the sign, obviously, sees his number's been called. He looks over to the right. He puts his, hand over his mouth. I don't know if he was, nibbling on his hand or what he was doing there. But he does that as he's looking down. Then when he finally looks back up, he looks over to the left side, completely avoiding eye contact or trying to look in the direction of Phil Neville. He walks around the fourth official, kind of gives Schneider a little hand. And Phil Neville's clearly trying to get his attention and talk to him, and Josef Martinez just keeps walking past. And you can see the image for a split second on the broadcast of Phil Neville's eyes are all big, and he's trying to catch Josef Martinez's attention, and he can't, and Josef Martinez just keeps walking. If you still that image, maybe I will. You know what? And when I push this episode out on Instagram, Miami Total Football at MIA Total Football. Maybe I'll use that image because I think that said a lot. Phil was hey. And Josef Martinez wanted nothing to do with it. That he walks to the bench and he punches the two empty seats. So, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But clearly, I agree with you. I think he was frustrated to come off. And I think a big part of that has to do with him not scoring. I don't know if it was so much the 90 minutes. Maybe. But I think it had to do with him not scoring. Especially because in the first half of the game, in the 18th minute, if I'm not mistaken, he should have had a goal. If Harvey Neville picks up his head and plays a fairly routine square ball. Now, Nicolas Stefanelli, in one of the few moments of the game where Inter Miami showed some creativity, he hits a through ball in behind to Harvey Neville. Harvey Neville penetrates into the penalty area, the final third. But rather than scoring it to an open Josef Martinez in front of an empty net, because Charleston Battery's goalkeeper came out to cut off the angle for Harvey Neville, instead of doing that, I won't call it selfish because I don't think Harvey Neville knew that Josef Martinez was there. I've watched the play over and over and over again. I don't think Harvey Neville had the awareness that Josef Martinez was there, not even instinctually. But it was not the high percentage play. He tries to force a shot to the back post, crossbody, and it just didn't work out. The goalkeeper makes the save. It wasn't a well-placed shot at all. So I think that was part of it, because the Josef Martinez initial reaction was like, hey, I'm here. And you didn't pass me the ball. So I think that weighed on him, that he felt like he should have had a goal, and he didn't. And I asked Victor Ulloa, who was the team captain for this game and who was the person that spoke after the match in the press conference setting. There was no mix zone because this is a U.S. Open Cup game. And Victor Ulloa, and I wrote about this on Miami Total Football Substack, so you can see the piece with the more thorough quotes. But Victor Ulloa, to paraphrase, said that Josef Martinez gets mad when they don't give him the ball. And Victor Ulloa said this with a smile on his face, so it wasn't like he was being critical, but he was saying, yeah, he gets mad when he doesn't score. He gets mad when we don't give him the ball. He always wants the ball. Actually, let me see if I can pull up the quote here. Here we go. Quote, he wants to score every single time he has a chance to, and he gets mad when we do not give him chances. We did not give him any chances in the first half in this game, and then he was talking about the coaches. Then the coaches take him off early, so yeah, he's upset that he did not get to finish the game. That was end quote.
Yeah,
that was from Victor Ulloa. That was from Victor Ulloa. Now, really quickly, this was Phil Neville, and part of one of his many post-game quotes about the moment. Quote, what I liked about him the most tonight was his anger when he came off. He was frustrated. I liked it. It is the first time I've seen a little bit of anger. We have been trying to poke him a little bit to get angry. I want him to get angry. I want him to get nasty. I want him to sort of get a fire. I like that tonight. I saw something in that excites me about Saturday's game against New England for Josef. End quote. We'll see if Phil Neville likes it, if it happens again and again and again. We'll see. Because this was Phil Neville's gamble. And, again, maybe this is just a one-off.
At least Phil is not like Gonzalo Pineda, that if they get into a physical fight, he's going to respond, right? He's poking a bear.
We'll see. We'll see. So anyway, anything you want to add there with regards to the Josef Martinez frustration?
No, for me, his frustration was warranted, or however you say it. But yeah. It's nothing. I don't think it's gonna. I agree with you. We have to see how that goes. His situation, especially with Phil, but I don't think it was that big of a deal. I have seen players do a lot of worse, and he just scored 2 goals. He wanted to score more, especially of how the team was playing. Like playing a USL team, and you're playing with a back 5. Like, let's talk about that now.
So that's where we.
How the hell is Josef going to get the ball?
So that's where we go next. You're right. That's where we go next. Inter Miami won by a 1-0 mark against the Charleston Battery in the round of 32 game in the U.S. Open Cup on Tuesday night at Drive Pink Stadium in front of a sparse crowd. Probably the lowest attended
game. Did they announce attendance?
I believe they put out a number. I just can't recall exactly what it was. I'd have to look it up here. But I'll do that here in a moment. But the formation that Inter Miami used to start this game was a 5-2-2-1. If you want to, you could say it was a 3-4-3 or a 3-4-2-1, because yes, the wingbacks were pushed higher up the field, but I will stick with saying it was a back 5 because of the profile of the wingbacks. So this was the starting lineup. Nick Marsman in goal. The back 5 was comprised of Harvey Neville, Christopher McVeigh, Ryan Saylor, Kamal Miller, and Franco Negri. The first line of the midfield playing as joint 6s, David Ruiz and Victor Ulloa. Ahead of them, playing as joint 10s, operating in the pockets or half spaces, so more central, not out wide, were Nicolas Stefanelli and Robert Taylor. And up top, Josef Martinez, who we've already talked about regarding this game. Now, Andrea, Inter Miami wins off of an own goal in the 48th minute. Juan Sebastian Palma scores off of it was an attempted clearance by a teammate, but it ricochets off his face and into the back of the net. A painful goal, not only because it hit off his face, in terms of a physical aspect, but probably also from an emotional standpoint because it's a bit embarrassing. But it was a goal that I think perfectly summed up this game, because it was an ugly game. The less that can be said about that first half, the better. But overall, a poor display of soccer from both sides. I think Charleston actually had some moments with the ball. And listen, Inter Miami, like I just mentioned, with the lineup and the players that were in there, it was a mixed group. Probably a lineup that hasn't had many reps together in practice, right? It's not like you're going to mix starters and backups like that in a training session consistently. So probably not a group that's played together all that much, which probably played into the low performance levels. Phil Neville said after the game he expected a little more quality. I understand that point, but I don't know how you can expect that much quality when you have so many defensive players, plus a group that hasn't really probably played all together all that much. But nonetheless, they won 1-0 with an ugly goal. They couldn't find the back of the They couldn't find the back of the net themselves. So what do you make of this performance?
Horrendous. And Phil knew that is why he brought DeAndre Yedlin and Dixon Arroyo, because he knew and Charleston was close to tying this game in many opportunities in the second half. That is why he had to bring the big guns and take Harvey and take David Ruiz.
I don't know if many, but they
had
close.
3-4 chances and they were very close to scoring and the 80th.
One hit the post. One hit the post. That was the best chance. Right.
Yeah. And that is why he brought DeAndre Yedlin and Dixon Arroyo, because I guess he didn't expect to see that low quality of football that the team was playing. Listen, for me, it's unacceptable. For me, it's unacceptable the way that Inter Miami is playing. I know they are getting the results, but I really think this team is capable of playing better. One positive thing I would like to say is in that match against Atlanta, also I really like Stefanelli. He's getting through balls. He's putting up passes, really good passes, reading the game very well, and maybe that means that he's finally getting into place with the team and finding his desired position. So that is about the only positive thing that I can say about this match, because for me it's unacceptable. It was, listen, for me, the way that Inter Miami played this match, it was even worse than what they did against Miami FC, and I thought that they couldn't do worse than that, but I was incorrect. Hopefully the team if the team plays.
Why did you think it was worse? Let us know why.
Because at least against Miami FC, they created opportunities. They had the ball, they had the possession, they were constantly attacking. In this match, okay, they had a couple, like 2 or 3 opportunities in the whole match of real danger against an opponent that is supposedly a second division opponent, and you couldn't get more opportunities.
What do you mean supposedly? What do you mean supposedly? They are a second division team.
You couldn't get any chances.
So
you couldn't build play. You couldn't do it.
So I agree with you that the performance was awful from an attacking standpoint. Defensively, it was largely okay. They had some moments of worry, but largely defensively weren't overly troubled. Nick Marsman didn't have to make any fantastic saves. Now, going back to what I said before, when Inter Miami comes out with a back five and 2 6s that are destroyers, that are defensive-minded players in Ulloa and Ruiz, and then you just have essentially 3 real attacking players in Stefanelli, Josef Martinez, and Robert Taylor. I mean, where's the attack going to really come from?
Yeah.
How are you going to generate a whole lot of chances with that defensive of a team? Yes, Franco Negri gets forward very well, and he can whip in good crosses, and he's got some attacking qualities. Absolutely, I don't take that away. But by and large,
he played because he's not going to play
on the weekend because of the red card. But again, when you have so many defensive players, how are you going to generate a whole lot of attack? Now, I'll go into the midfield a little bit because I think that's something that needs to be talked about, especially when you've now seen these last 2 games and you can put them on the balance beam and really weigh things out. Look, losing Jean Mota, I think, hurts Inter Miami more than losing Gregory did. Because Gregory, you can not find a like-for-like replacement, but you can find someone that does similar roles of destroying, of taking up positions, and helping to just help protect that back line. without Jean Mota, they don't have anyone on that first line of the midfield, especially now that Bryce Duke has been traded, that can do that job. Que puede hacer esa función. That can have those responsibilities of, feeling comfortable collecting a pass from the backline or the goalkeeper under some pressure, and then linking the defense to the attack with an array or a range of passes. Because Jean Mota can hit a long ball, he can play it short, he can combine, he takes shots from distance. They've lost a lot of football without Jean Mota. And look, I like what I've seen from David Ruiz in his starts. That being said, with the ball, he's not the best. Defensively, I've really liked what I've seen, and I think that's where he's shown the brightest in his early Inter Miami appearances. Like making tackles, he's fearless. Even on the ball in tight spaces, he has shown some things. But his range of passing when looking to play forward isn't good. And I think in this game, he was seen as the guy that needed to be the link. Based on when I rewatched the game, they tried to play through him. But his forward passes, whether they were long balls over the top or short passes on the ground, they weren't the most accurate. And they constantly led to 50-50s, or they constantly were turnovers. And that did not allow Inter Miami to get going from an attacking standpoint. I won't blame him for that. It's just a function of, or a result of the team not having someone like Jean Mota and asking a defensive player to try to do that role. And it just didn't work. It didn't work. So that was one of the reasons why Inter Miami struggled in this game in terms of an attacking posture. That they just couldn't string together sequences by and large. They just didn't have anyone that could get the ball to the three attacking players on a consistent basis. You saw a lot of diagonal long balls, a lot of square passes, lateral passes. But in terms of trying to build forward and try to play balls through lines and those type of things, breaking lines, just didn't see it. So that I think is on Phil Neville as much as it is on any player like David Ruiz, because David Ruiz is the player who he is. You can't ask, DeAndre Yedlin to be a goal poaching striker because it's not his qualities. Yeah. Like you could put him up there and see how it goes, but probably not going to work out too well for you. So I don't blame David Ruiz. I just think he was asked to do something he's not the best at, and as you might expect, it didn't pay off, and Inter Miami struggled heavily as a result. Because Victor Ulloa also not a guy that's going to be the cleanest on the ball and build forward and link the defense to the attack. Which again, Andrea, goes back to the point of why I think it's progress. You're talking about a team that is limited. It's like, Andrea, if I gave you,
everyone's comment. Do you feel proud of going through playing the way that you did? Especially because when a team goes through in a competition like this, that is a single elimination match, when a team goes through, you say like, oh, they could go deep. They have a possibility. Do you really see Inter Miami going deep?
No, I don't.
This competition?
I don't. I think the next game
played like this against Nashville, man. Even Nashville.
I think the next game, I think Nashville is gonna knock them out. Unless something happens between now and then.
Against Aníbal Godoy and Hani Mukhtar get injured,
right? So I think Inter Miami's probably done next game. I would say very likely done next game in the Open Cup.
You never know with football, but
you never know. But I agree with you.
I
agree with you.
Rendimiento of the team. It really disappointed me because, listen, I vuelvo y repito, as we say in Spanish. I think this team, even if they had to defend, even if they had to play with a back five, I think they would do better if they play a little bit to attack, to get something else. I think they have the players to do it. I don't think they have that tactical, maybe intelligence to use all the players. It has been obvious. But for me, this team, even with these players, can do a lot better.
So and I agree with you, but that's where the head coach comes in, and I think Phil Neville is limited tactically in that way, which goes back to the main point of why I think under him, this is progress, because this is what you can expect, Phil Neville's teams to be good at. This is what they've shown to be good at. But anyway, going back to just the overall performance, I don't think against Nashville SC, and I don't think at any other point, if they continue in the US Open Cup, that you'll see a lineup like this. I think you could see, a shuffled lineup, but I think you'd see a stronger 11. Not so many players from the bench. Like Nick Marsman started in goal. I'm not saying he's not someone that can't play a US Open Cup game, but clearly they went with a very, very rotated 11. I don't think you'll see that as much against Nashville SC in 2 weeks' time.
I want to say something before we wrap this up and begin talking about the next game. For me, getting Marshman on this game and getting Drake Callender against Miami FC confirms that Phil was under a lot of stress to win against Miami FC.
Well, it was a different time. They were on the 6-game losing streak in MLS play.
As he said that he didn't feel the pressure. For me, this lineup shows how pressured he was against Miami FC. And
right, well, I mean, yes and no, but we talked about that, so I won't dive into it too much because yes,
the lineup
he felt some pressure.
Was better.
He felt some pressure, sure, absolutely, but there was a different moment. If they had won 3 games prior to playing Miami FC, then I think maybe you could have seen a lineup like the Charleston Battery. But Futbol es el momento. Soccer is about moments. In that moment, Inter Miami was on a long losing streak. Since then, heading into this past Tuesday's game, Inter Miami was in a better run of form. So to turn the tide.
4 wins in a row.
No.
And please, people, be serious.
4 games unbeaten, we can say, but not unbeaten, but not 4
wins in
a
row. No. And everyone that is going to tag me or saying something like that, man, just don't, because seriously, no se lo coman a Phil. He's unbeaten, but he has not won 4 games in a row, please.
So to start wrapping this game up, I like the tone of the post-game press conference. Inter Miami won, they advanced, but the tone of the press conference after the game wasn't all positive and rah and upbeat. It was more critical, more analytical, more what needs to be better. I like the line of questioning from everybody, generally speaking, better. And I think the tone fit with the performance we saw on the field. Because I see, Andrea, there I would say it's being resultadista to go and talk all positive after a performance like that against an inferior opponent like that. To sing praise and heap praise after that type of game just because they won, that I think is resultadista. Against better teams, like Inter Miami has played and MLS play, I don't, because they're playing better teams. And I don't think they can go blow for blow with those teams. I think they would lose if they go blow for blows for those teams. So they play a smarter, ruder, cruder type of game, and it's worked for them. But anyway, going back to the press conference. Jose Armando, a.k.a. Island Jose, for me, stole the show with his question to Phil about the style of play and about if Phil Neville was concerned, or how concerned was Phil Neville about the fact that Inter Miami is not playing a very attractive style. And Phil Neville...
What do you mean, Jose?
Asked Jose, what do you mean? He asked him to expand his thought in terms of the question. And Jose responded like the experienced, seasoned, eloquent reporter that he is. And it was fantastic. I was very proud of him as a colleague. I was very proud of him as a Miami Total Football radio co-host. He expressed his thought very clearly in that, people go to the stadium to watch goals and to see teams attack. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't defensive-minded teams in the world that have some level of success. But it is South Florida. Fans want to see, of course, wins, but they also want to see an attractive style. If you can package those together, I think that's the ideal world for Inter Miami fans, and actually for probably most fans around the world, if not all fans around the world. And Phil Neville again doubled down on the fact that when they've played nice soccer, they have not been able to win games, and that reverting to this defensive-minded approach has allowed them to be better. And that, yes, he agreed. He's told Jose he thinks that the team has to play better. They need to improve in many facets, but that they've now found or started to find a manner to win games. And it's not pretty, but it's proving, until now, somewhat effective. Anything you want to say about Jose's question and Phil's ensuing response?
I think Jose did really well in transmitting the idea, an idea that both him and I, or me, how do you say I or me? Both him and I.
He and I.
Have. So I really liked his question, and I also agree with you that he stood up well for what he was thinking and made Phil have to respond the way that he did. He had to be honest because, well, as I always say, lo que se ve no se pregunta. We can all see how Inter Miami is playing. Hopefully for him, for his job stability, the team keeps getting the points, because if not, it's not the players that are gonna get traded or blah blah blah. It's him that will suffer.
Some of them might.
Yeah, well, yeah, some of them might, yeah. But listen, and I also agree with you that this is a press conference that was good, because I don't like seeing people in the media room being acting like fans and praising and everything. Our job is to try to get answers, try to get our questions answered, the fans' questions answered. And we cannot be, even if we have a good relationship with the coach and with the players, we have to ask them tough questions. So I was glad that even if they won, people were responding to that and asking Phil and really getting him to answer these
right.
questions that you have, that Jose has, and that the people in the press box have.
The questions made Phil a little uncomfortable, right? Like, they made him have to think and have to choose his words. It wasn't all easy to talk about because he's heaping praise on the team and players. Like, lo hicieron un poco incómodo.
Exactly.
And I think that and I don't think that needs to be every press conference.
Yeah.
But I think the questions in the press conference have to line up with the tone and mood of what we just saw on the field.
Yes.
And sometimes I do feel like Inter Miami, because they win, although they play poorly, although what happens on the field, I think some people are too resultadistas and get too caught up in the euphoria of the victory and they won, so it's all positive, when that's not the case. Look, you can lose and come away with good sensations, and you can win and come away with bad sensations. That is the beauty, I'm going to be redundant here, of the beautiful game.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if Inter Miami played against the number one team in MLS, or they played against Real Madrid, whatever, and they lost, but they put up a heck of a fight, you would come away with good sensations despite the fact that they lost. Now, if they play against Charleston Battery and they went off an own goal that hits, an opponent in the face, and that's their only goal, and they only yield 3 shots on target, then, of course, you're not going to come away with the best sensations, even though they won. Yeah. So I think the press conference fit the tone of the performance, and it was, I think, refreshing to see from a journalistic standpoint, because it's not letting Phil off the hook just because they won. And exactly. and I think that is, the accountability that needs to be had consistently, not only for Inter Miami, but
for the league.
Across MLS. Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
I agree 100%. With you that there is a little bit too much result-oriented coverage regularly. Now, listen, it's professional sports teams. You get paid to do well. You get paid based off the results. But football has that element where it's not just results. It's also about the performance. That is an element of it all. But anyway, all right. So we'll leave it there in terms of the games that happened. Let's preview very quickly, because we've been talking for a while. The game that will happen on Saturday. Inter Miami plays its third game in 8 days, once again at home at Drive Pink Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, against the New England Revolution, Andrea, the top team in the Eastern Conference.
I'm excited.
New England has a 7-win, 3-draw, and 1-loss record in MLS play. They've scored 18 goals. They've given up 9. Goal differential, of course, of +9. Now, New England just lost in the U.S. Open Cup. They were upset midweek by the Pittsburgh Riverhounds.
Go USL.
So, they're not going to be in the best of moods because they just got knocked out of that competition, but they're still a very talented team, and they will give Inter Miami,
they played with a very, very
reserved
academy-like thing. Yeah. But either way, they lost. But listen, this game, it's got me excited because New England is the best team in the conference for me. They're playing Bruce Arenas type of football. And, well, he is one of the best coaches in American football. It's going to be hard for Inter Miami. Listen, this team has really good players. Carlos Gil, we already know him, and has given Inter Miami a lot of problems also in the past. Boateng, and now Bobby Wood. They have also, I think, 2 Inter Miami players.
2 former Inter Miami players. Yeah. That's right. Christian Makoun
and Ben Sweat.
Ben Sweat. They both started midweek against the Pittsburgh Riverhounds in that 1-0 home loss for the Revolution. So, yes, 2 former Inter Miami players are in that roster.
It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be an interesting game, yeah.
New England played pretty football. I like how they play. They have good players, and they are very dangerous. They are very, very dangerous. It's going to be hard for Inter Miami. If we see a type of performance as we have been seeing, I don't think the New England Revolution will be as forgiving as Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a very interesting match to watch how Phil Neville approaches it, because I don't have any hesitation to say that I think Inter Miami is going to play defensive. Yeah. But how do they go about that? How do they look to, of course, stay compact, but also look to hit in the moments that they'll have in the attack? That is what's going to be very curious to me, and I think that is the key to the game. And I've said this before when it comes to Inter Miami, and you could say that it comes down to the players on the field, but I would say this game, tactically, how Phil Neville approaches it will be instrumental to the team's chances.
Yeah, me too. I don't think if he gets it wrong with the formation and the players that he chooses, or the lineup, he is going to pay. New England are gonna make them pay, especially if they have those problems that we have been seeing, that we talked about in this podcast. New England is not gonna be forgiving, so it will be really interesting to me as you said, to see what kind of lineup Phil gets in this game, and he knows it.
It's going to be a back 5, right? It's going to be a back 5.
It has to be a back 5. It has to be a back 5 against a team like New England Revolution that score many goals, that have very dangerous, not only strikers, but midfielders. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. And listen, the thing with a back 5 is that when you have a back 5 and you get Yelling and Negri is not going to play in this game. So that is something to take into consideration. Maybe we could see McVay playing.
So that's the next question. Although I just wanted to note this. New England has not lost in MLS play since March 12th, a 4-0 loss to LAFC. Since then, unbeaten in, again, regular season play. So, yes, they had a midweek disappointment and upset and frustrating result. But in MLS play, when they play their stronger lineup, they've been very good. So, Andrea, what lineup do you think we see? Let's go through the 11, and we'll wrap up this first segment here. What lineup do you think we see? Because there's going to be at least one mandatory change because Franco Negri is out with the red card. I think that is very interesting. I think it's something we should dive into a little bit. So let's start in goal. Drake Callender goes back in. Both agree?
Yeah.
We both think it's a back 5?
Yes.
All right. DeAndre then comes back into the right wing back spot after not starting on Tuesday. Yes?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Then I think your back 3 depends on what you do at left back, or left wing back. So let's go to the left wing back spot. Who is it? Is it Harvey Neville, who is not a natural left wing back, but who can play the wing back spot out there, and he has in the past, or do they go Christopher McVey? What do you think?
I think he's going to go with McVey. Because he has played there in the past, and he has played there in a back five. So I think he could trust him a little bit more than Harvey, that would be playing not on his natural position, and that would be a disadvantage against
He's played him there before, though. He's played him there before.
He's played there before, but it's cambiado, so it's not those
inverted.
games that he has played there. Yeah, it has not been his best games. So
and this is a different level of opponent.
A level, yeah, exactly. So you cannot risk it. For me, it would be McVey.
So if McVey starts there, who are your three center backs?
Then it would be Kamal Miller.
So let's go from right to left. Mm-hmm. I think Christoph, mm-hmm. the sweeper would be Ryan Saylor. Kamal Miller as the left center back. So I agree that I think it'll be McVey because of the level of opponent that it is. If it was a different opponent,
he could try.
I think he would trust Harvey Neville to get the job done. Yeah. But because it's the New England Revolution, and because it's Bruce Arena, who Phil Neville has waxed poetry on and talked about how much he admires him, I think it'll be Christopher McVey.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Agreed.
I'm with you.
Wow, we are agreeing. Is this the end of time?
I thought it was Harvey Neville earlier today, but then when I gave it a little more thought throughout the day, a colleague actually asked me, who's doing a preview, he asked me via Twitter on DMs not too long ago. I initially said Harvey, and then I thought about it a little more, and I was like, I think it's going to be McVey. I think he'll go for the more seasoned option there against this level of opponent. Now, midfield, Andrea, this is where, how do you think Inter Miami lines up? Do they keep going with that 2-2, essentially a box in the midfield? Do they go a flat 4? What do you think?
Yeah, 4. Dixon Arroyo and David Ruiz are going to play.
So you think it's a flat 4, or do you think it's the 2 and then the 2 ahead of them in the box, where you have 2 6s and 2 10s, or dos cincos y dos diez? And I know for you guys listening that are bilingual, cinco does not equal 6. That's 5. But that's how soccer is in terms of the positional references in each language. Anyway, all right. I think they go. I think they go the
double 5. Yeah, double 6, as you say in English, doble cinco with Dixon and David Ruiz, and then you get 2 guys.
It's going to be Clemachi and Stefanelli.
And Stefanelli, yeah.
And
maybe you can get Corentin John instead of Clemachi. I don't think so.
No, I think Clemachi's going to stay.
And Leo Campana.
Campana up top. Yep. Yeah. I think that's what we see. Just because. So we're in full agreement. It'll be a 5-2-2-1 based on, the success they had against Columbus, the level of opposition here. And they're going to try to just battle through the game and try to pluck a goal at the other end in a clinical fashion or off a set piece. I think that's what they will look to do. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if they can get something out of the game. I think a draw is not a bad result for them, even though it's at home and they've dropped points at home.
A draw would be a win against this team.
Right, so I don't think it's a bad result. But all right, let's leave it there, Andrea. We've been talking for a while. We'll come back for a quick Q&A session and our final thoughts. We'll do that after this. All right, Andrea, a quick Q&A session here. We'll start with Sal Paradise. And Sal Paradise asks, I think I already know the answer, but do you have any updates at all on Robbie Robinson? Is he ever seen at training? Keep up the great work, guys! ! Thank you, Sal Paradise. We appreciate that, as well as your continued listens and questions. So I will answer this one. Robbie Robinson has a calf injury, according to the team. Is he seen at training? Nope. He has not seen at training. And I think that there's more to it than just him being injured. I think that there's a lot more behind it. What that is, I don't know yet. I can tell you what I think, but I don't
They're trying to get rid of him.
Well, I don't have concrete answers as to what's going on. I do think there's more at play than him just being injured. I think there's an issue there between the player and the team and how the player goes about how he does things, and the team just kind of already just being ready to turn the page. Like you don't hear Phil really talk about Robbie Robinson anymore, or talk about how important they need him and all these things that he used to say. Like it's kind of like he's just been forgotten about. Like he's just kind of a headache that they've pushed off to the side. That's my sensation, my interpretation, my supposition. That's not inside information. What is inside information is that apparently he has a calf injury that he's dealing with. That's what the team has told us. Andrea, do you want to hit a different question or anything to add there? Okay.
No, I agree 100% with you.
Okay. Joseph E. asks, guys, what do we have to do to get that Papa John's sponsorship deal? Is this because we're assuming Messi is coming and we would win too much? Like, come on, we want pizza. Also, well, when will this injury bug end?
Listen, that is a very good question. Thanks to Joseph for being a loyal follower. If it was up to us, we would get Papa John's pizza back.
What happened to that?
It's kind of weird because every team has it. So I don't know.
You know what happened? They listened to Miami Total Futbol Radio and they heard Andrea and Jose promise me a baleada over and over and over again. Saw that they never made good on that, and they were like, what? We don't need to feed people to keep them happy. Franco can be happy with Jose and Andrea without ever having a baleada. Well, then Inter Miami fans will be just fine without Papa John's pizza. Maybe that's what Inter Miami did. They took you guys as an example and went with that approach, because I still have not had a baleada. Thanks to you guys.
Say here that Franco's birthday is on Saturday.
It is, and I will celebrate it at the stadium. I will be celebrating at the stadium working.
So we're gonna get him baleadas for his birthday. Last year I got him a cake. We got him a cake, but Jose couldn't go to that match, and Jose won't be able to go to this match either, but we're going to celebrate Franco's birthday with baleadas.
I will believe it when I see it. I almost had a baleada without them this week, my first ever one in my 34, almost 35 years of existence, when I passed by a Honduran restaurant as I was going to like a quick little convenience store. Earlier this week, I even took a picture, put it on Twitter, because it even says right there, comida hondureña, and it says baleadas in big letters right next to it. I almost did it. I give them one last chance. No, you have to
do it with us.
I give them one last chance. If on my birthday, Andrea lets me down, that's it. I'm not waiting anymore. I'll have a baleada first thing on Sunday without her.
No, I'm taking baleadas on Saturday. And listen, to answer Joseph's questions, it can become a problem for Inter Miami because they've had a lot of injuries in matches like Gregory and Mota, but also players having problems physically, like in this case Pizarro in this moment, that is not 100% and hasn't come back. So it's been really hard for the team. It's been really hard, especially as Franco said, they lost for us. I agree with Franco that Mota has been the best player for the team in this season, and they lost him. So
best field player, I think.
Best field.
Trey Calendar's probably still a little bit above him, although it was getting closer because Calendar hasn't been called upon as much lately. I'll add this. I sometimes think that Inter Miami, under Phil Neville, trains the players a little too hard. And yes, injuries are part of the game, and it's normal that players will be injured along the way. Look, Gregory and Jean Mota didn't get injured because they were overtrained. They got injured because of tackles and challenges on the field. But I think they may be overtraining them. That's my supposition and my sensation. And I mean, we could dive deeper into it, but I think that might be an element. That might. I won't say for sure that it is, but I think that might be an element.
I can agree with you, especially why, because in Mota's injury, that injury happened at the beginning of that game.
Yeah, but it was off a challenge.
Yeah, but Franco, he played the rest of the match. For me, that is unacceptable. Like if you,
that is pretty interesting that he was able to power through the rest of the game after suffering a ligament issue that's going to take him out for several months. I do think that's interesting. But and I think you could read something into that, but I think overall, based off the body of work over the last few years, look, Dawn Scott lasted, I think, one season with Inter Miami before she parted ways and went to the Washington Spirit, which I think is a downgrade from working at Inter Miami. And Inter Miami had several injuries last year as well, so I think there might be an element of overtraining at play. But that's just, again, supposition, sensation, not inside information. All right, let's leave it there for the Q&A session. Andrea, your final thoughts, then mine, and we'll wrap up the show after that. I have a feeling yours is going to be about David Ruiz and Honduras. That's just what I think.
Well, I did that last week, but yes, David Ruiz, Honduras, he's so good-hearted. We Hondurans are so good-hearted because we let him stay even though he had to be in camp, and Phil even thanked the national team. Can you imagine that? Well, it's Honduras, so they do it to Honduras. They wouldn't do that to the United States, but that's another thing. My final thought for this week is we have another update on a player that left Inter Miami and is doing good in his career. And this time I'm going to talk about Emerson Rivaldo Rodriguez, because Emerson with his team Santos Laguna qualified for the Liguilla in Mexico, and they won the repechaje against the champions Pachuca, with Emerson playing 75 minutes against Pachuca. They won in penalties. And they played yesterday against Monterrey, and they tied. Emerson was again a starter, and he played for 76 minutes. So I'm really glad that we have another example that players that leave this team after being marginalized here are doing well in other places. And to add to that, we have to talk about also Bryce Duke and Ariel Lassiter, who are having the time of their lives in Montreal, alongside my favorite MLS player, Romel Kyoto. I had not mentioned Romel Kyoto in a lot, so there you have it. A Romel Kyoto mention to end my participation in the podcast.
Shocker. Listen, Bryce Duke is definitely producing in Montreal, and he scored a goal and gotten an assist, and definitely showing the flashes of what he showed last year, and doing that in his initial introduction to CF Montreal. I don't know if you can give Emerson Rodriguez that much credit. Yes, he played the other day and he contributed to the win, but overall in his loan over to Santos Laguna, he's played in 9 league matches, gotten 3 starts, has not found the back of the net. I know football is not all about goals, but he is an attacking player and a winger, so I think of the examples of players that have left and thrived elsewhere. I think at this point right now, he's towards the bottom of ones you can be like, yeah, they really, really went and
he's
took it up another level.
He's being a starter.
He started 3 out of 9 games, Andrea. That's not a lot.
Right now, in the part of the season that counts, he's starting.
We'll see. We'll see in the other games. But anyway, I think Bryce Duke is a better example so far from the early returns, because it's early.
And Bryce Duke, let me finish saying this. Kyoto scored. He was injured for 4 matches. He hadn't played with Bryce Duke and Ariel Lassiter. He came back, and Bryce Duke started that play for Romel Kyoto to score his goal coming back from injury. So I'm really happy to see Bryce Duke and Romel Kyoto together in Montreal.
Well, I think there you have more of a case. But anyway, my final thought is on something interesting that happened this week on social media from not Inter Miami, but an Inter Miami related account. And that's that, look, the initial news is that Sergio Busquets has said he is leaving Barcelona. We pretty much knew that was happening. It's been alluded to for some time, but it's official now. He is going to leave at the end of this season. Where he's headed next, there's rumors about Saudi Arabia. He's been linked with Inter Miami for some time. Last year, I think maybe it was after the mid-season summer friendly against Inter Miami, he said something along the lines of he wants to play in MLS. And again, there's been reports and numerous links of him joining the South Florida side. Drive Pink Stadium's Instagram account posted a thank you picture, a congratulations picture of Sergio Busquets and his time with Barcelona, which seems kind of odd, because why would you congratulate a player that has played in your stadium once as an opposing player and has never really done anything for Inter Miami, right? Like, why? Is that a sign that he might be coming? If you want to read into that like that, then yeah, you could. I would, because why? Why does Sergio Busquets deserve that treatment? Why don't other players get that treatment from Drive Pink Stadium's
trying
Instagram
to get
accounts?
Trying to get the bus on.
The picture was Sergio Busquets and Gregory from last season in that friendly. So I think that you could read into that for sure. I think that's a sign that maybe Sergio Busquets will be arriving in a matter of a few weeks. Again, just my supposition, not inside information. But anyway, that does it for this week's show. Again, apologies for the late release, but the rare Tuesday match, the turnaround from that Saturday, it made for a very, very challenging week. But we will be back again next week. I will promise you, if I have to do it alone, I'll do it alone. We will be back before next Wednesday's game against Nashville SC to recap the match against the New England Revolution and preview what's to come. And then we'll have a second episode later in the week to recap the midweek match and preview the ensuing weekend's game against Orlando City. So, for Andrea Yanez, I am Franco Panizo. You have been listening to Miami Futbol Radio. We'll talk to you guys again next week.